G'day guys, welcome to Market Sam After Work. Today I've got a video, just a little bit of a follow-up video. I recently did a video showing the what we do to set up to go for a shoot. So in that I mentioned the particular rifle that we're using then was one that was assembled in the safe. But then, and many other times, I mentioned that I put a rifle together. I largely don't store rifles as rifles. I largely store rifles and have more rifles because I don't actually have more rifles because I have a bunch of parts and I put them together as suit. One action, 3 or 4 barrels at the same action, and then chassis and all that sort of bits and pieces, all separate bits and pieces, but not a big deal for, yes, I'm a gunsmith, but not a big deal in general to put together in any mechanical sense. And I suppose it starts with the chambering we're talking about. So the chambering is in a barrel. Now in this case I've got it attached to the action simply out of efficiency. I'm not able to assemble it in front of you, but I have to go back down my workshop to put the barrel into the action, which is just to use the press to tighten it up in there properly, but otherwise just screws in with the thread into the action. But here's this one here. This is the 7mm WSM. Written on there, 7mm WSM, which is just written on with a chemi pen. Barrel, which I'll put all the details of what this rifle is, but there it is, a nice barrel on the KS Arms 3-lug action, 3-lug long action with a dual trigger on it. Generally I'll have just the action in one safe, which is all in a storage area, which is all locked up and done, and they'll have barrels in another safe. Sort of stuff is where I tend to do it. In our country, in our state, they do need to be in a safe because they're firearm parts. And that's how I store them, but separate bits and pieces. There's another 3 barrels that I got to go on this action, but there's that bit, this action, like I said, dual trigger, and I've got a slightly modified bolt knob on it, but great actions. And this has a 60 MOA rail from KS Arms, but 60 MOA. So that's what I have is the basics of where we start with this. On the front of that, I have specifically just on the bench a 3-port muzzle brake that's suited this one. Time to go into this one, but there's a 3-port muzzle brake ready to go. And then there's this is a GCPD chassis. This is the one we got done neutral anodized, so it ended up with this sort of champagne color, a bit custom setup for what we wanted, running one of our custom bag riders to suit this. And this one's also modified to take our component D, or a slightly modified component D, to go onto the front of it. But nice chassis. And the last bit of the chassis side of things, this is just an accurate magazine to go into it, but that's the chassis side of it. Then in the cupboard that runs on everything is one of my bipod systems. So this is the component A, some long atlas legs, and then my solid feet that go with that. So that's in the cupboard at home. And of course we have one of our scopes. This is the 7x35. This is the last one that was running this rifle, so I thought I'd put it back together as you saw it. But there it is in an air attack base with a vortex bubble level, that sort of stuff. And that's that. Now, because of the rules here, I won't go through and do this on the video because you can't let me see me put it together. Nothing too exciting, but I'll be back in a second and I'll go through the rifle a bit, the final details. Okay, assembled. Very straightforward process. This is the tools. There's a nylon hammer, which is the nicest way to tap on a muzzle brake, or my sort of muzzle brake, and the way I do that type of thing. Nice and neat. You can get it to a nice felt tension, easy to time, that sort of stuff, but a nylon hammer. An Allen key to put on my bipod system. Another Allen key to tighten up these here. I'll go through with a torque wrench when I'm being really thorough, but largely I do the wrong thing and use my 50-year-old or 60-year-old mechanic's wrist as a torque wrench. I say 50 because I sort of started playing with mechanical stuff when I was about 10. But anyway, and then just a little ratchet which I go through and do on this same sort of thing on just bolting down the scope down to the rail. Now I said it's a 60 MOA rail because that's largely what I run in the Night Force scope. I'm going to run 120 minutes of internal elevation, and I can plonk this on in a zeroed out form on the air attack, which means that then I have 0 at 100 yards and up to 120 minutes of elevation. I'll generally bore sight them, but I have found most of my setup is very, very consistent in rifle to rifle. I know where I'm setting them up. These ones sit here, I know it was, and this was very little adjustment. There's not too many shots ago, too many rifles ago, or videos ago that I had this scope set up on here. But I will bore sight to double check, and generally that will get me within sort of 1 to 2 MOA of a perfect zero. And if I need to, then if I'm trying to do a cold bore, then I will go out and check my zero. But that's basically where I start with the scope on that sort of setup. But what I actually showed you is really took about sort of less than 5 minutes. And generally the process for me of putting the rifle together out of parts, I have them with tags on them, bits and pieces. I know where they were, I know where they fit. It's 5 minutes to go and get everything. It's 5 minutes to tension the barrel into the front of it, and then 5 into the action, and then generally 5 minutes and we're assembled. I do a bore sight when I come home here and set it up. I've got my little sight system to do that and set up. I use a little mirror and bore sight and set up there, and then that's ready to go. This is back to exactly as it was when it fired the box of ammo that I think I fired 10 rounds or something the last time I fired it. I'd have reloaded them. They're ready to go, and this rifle's ready to go out there. But for those that ask on what do I mean by put a rifle together, well, that's what I mean by put a rifle together. It's not like building one from scratch. This is all machined to go together and pulls apart and goes back to very simply. And for the thoughts of we have huge amounts of safes with lots and lots of rifles in it. Listen, we've got a fair few safes, don't get me wrong, with the bits and pieces and different rifles we have. But when it comes to these things, they're largely just a bunch of parts. They are a barrel, a action, and we'll use the chassis, and we'll use them in different configurations all over the place. Always ultimately match to what they did in that configuration, but we mix and match beyond that point to make it sometimes a bit interesting, and also testing and I suppose becoming familiar with a multiple bunch of things rather than just one setup. Anyway, I hope you liked the video. Hope that made some sense. Thank you very much for checking in, and we'll catch you next time.